Hello and welcome back to Don Artie's Player Draft Tournament. If you don't know what this is all about, I made a very brief intro in the Beastie vs. B set for this one. But as a reminder, Don Artie is hosting a tournament, $600 prize pool, and four team captains, Waman, Core, Dr. Dapston, and myself, drafted players in an auction. And then these players are pitted against each others in 1v1s, such that kind of the strongest player plays the strongest, second strongest with the second strongest. That's what we have over here. So the top two teams, that's just a location, not any kind of ranking. So the top two teams, Waboon's, Whammond's team, and Man with Arms Core, have this lovely matchup of VortiX versus Lucifron, a play all five. You see the other matchups of this set between the two teams. And if you missed B versus Beastie, I most definitely recommend that you check it out here on my YouTube. That has been between my team and Dr. Dapston's team. So these players will play 5 games in total. Each game is worth 5 points, or 1 point actually. And that leaves you with 25 total points that you can get for your team in a set between two teams. The team that gets the majority of those will advance to the grand finals. With that being said, let's jump straight into game number 1 over here between VortiX and Lucifron. Score I need to reset, so bear with me until we get here. And this was just a leftover from a previous cast I did somewhere. So, VortiX spawning in to the south here with the color blue, with the Delhi Sultanate to the north. It is going to be Lucifron playing as the yellow Malians. Malians versus Delhi. This is where we have to highlight how the civilization draft works in this tournament. Each player gets 3 global bans, so 6 civilizations in total will be eliminated, and neither of the players can play them. That leaves us with exactly 10 civilizations available. Each of the players will get 5 of those in an alternating draft. Leaves us with 5 civilizations, all of which you will play, given that this is a play all 5 series. So Lucifron is going to open with the Delhi, and to the south, VortiX is going to open with... Actually, never mind, I'm confused it. It's VortiX with the Delhi, and Lucifron is going to be playing with the Malians. Don't forget to share some love, of course, to Don Artie for putting this tournament together. He has worked very hard to make that draft very enjoyable. And I'm delighted that he asked me to be a team captain. I had a lot of fun with the draft. I think I built a very fun team, and I'm looking forward to seeing some more sets from them. This is a set that I am not quote-unquote interested in as a team captain. I'm interested in this as a caster, of course, but this is between two teams that well, none of these are my teams. That's what I wanted to say. Okay. This has been a very long day for me, folks, and I'm partially sick as well, so apologies if I occasionally do not make sense. But unfortunately, you cannot just download recorded games in AoE 4 so that I can do this on a day where I'm actually somewhat functional. I gotta do it now, or we'll forever lose some of these games. So, apologies for this. Normally, I would do this on a day where I'm actually somewhat serviceable as a caster. So, no surprise on either side so far. This is just a good old-fashioned game. So let's take a look at the base layouts, because this is a big one. So Lucifron has both of his gold mines close to each other, which can be a blessing or a curse, given how the game plays out. It's a blessing as long as you're not the defender, because you will have both of these very well secure. It's also kind of offset to the back. It's kind of out in the open, hard to wall, so that could be a problem. But in general, if you want to defend your gold income, you just have to focus on one area, which is definitely a benefit. On the contrary, if you are getting raided and you are struggling to keep your base safe, you will lose access to both of your gold mines. So, in that way, it can end up being a curse. We'll have to see how this game goes. It's going to be Tower Victory coming in here from VortiX, but he will still likely open Ghazi Raiders, as most Delhi players do. On the other side, it is the Mansa Quarry right next to the town center, and a mill out in the open. Lucifron didn't even bother to place it on the berries. Just goes to show that he wants to go heavy on the cattle. No surprise on that front, but I'm somewhat surprised that he didn't place it close to the berries. Normally, players are willing to sacrifice that much villager walking time just to get it on the berries, so eventually you can get the berries going. You probably won't need it at any moment, but it's always good to have that backup. Looking at the base of VortiX here briefly, he's got a beautiful gold mine at the back, and this is big. This essentially guarantees that he's going to have a very safe source of gold initially, so even without access to the sacred sites, he's going to be able to maintain scholar production. And that's going to be important because he's going up to the Tower of Victory, so his scholars will be very expensive individually. Lucifron is very heavy on the eco side of things, you see. He went with the cattle, he's now grabbing double broadaxe as well. No production buildings, nothing whatsoever. He's just going to play a super eco-focused game for the time being. And on the other side, no surprises. VortiX just going for Sanctity here, prioritizing getting those upgrades going. He's going to open with a stable. Now, of course, that stable is going to get your Ghazi Raider, a unit that you can use to start torching down these buildings. So eventually, we will need to see some Dunsos potentially from Lucifron. Maybe Warrior Scouts, that could be an intriguing option as well. But for now, he's got no forces back at home to defend with. In the meantime, if you are enjoying this type of content, I greatly appreciate if you subscribe to the channel. Those metrics help me greatly. If you're already subscribed to the channel, well, I thank you for your support. Hopefully you enjoy the content that's coming out. Nice little touch by VortiX, trying to park the scout close to the gold mine so he can body block any kind of houses that are being built. He's also buying time for his Ghazi Raider to arrive. VortiX, of course, he's also grabbing a lot of upgrades, but those are for free, so he might as well do that. Lucifron already has double broadaxe, has wheelbarrow coming in, and there's the barracks for future Dunsos. Not the entire pit mine was saturated with houses over here for Lucifron, so there's a bit of a lost efficiency, I guess, here for this pit mine. But at the end of the day, it's not like he can get those houses going anyways, so he's gonna have to wait until the Dunso shows up. Now, what's going to be more intriguing is that these sacred sites are all out in the middle of nowhere. And none of these are very well defendable. It's not like there are any nice choke points that you can hold. Of course, you can wall the individual sacred sites in, but for VortiX, holding more than 2 sacred sites is going to be a big challenge. And I think I would be surprised if he was able to hold even 2 sacred sites for an extended period of time. Range coming in as well for Lucifron. We're starting to see that deadly combination of javelin throwers and Dunsos appear. But for the time being, this is only one Dunso, and VortiX is using the Ghazi Raiders perfectly here, dancing back and forth, trying to torch down the pit mine. Both these players, of course, needless to say, are exceptional micro players. We're going to see some spectacular moves from them, no doubt. Pit mine on fire, Lucifron pulling the villagers to try and heal it. But as he's trying to do that, the Ghazi Raiders charge in, villagers have to fall back, and VortiX is actually willing to sacrifice some of his troops over here to try and burn that pit mine down. He actually does pick off the javelin thrower as well. The Dunso goes down too. VortiX, he did lose his scout in return, but he takes out the pit mine, which is very valuable in this position. So one pit mine gone. He probably won't be able to torch down the other, but he could potentially torch a couple of houses down. Still, an exceptional start here for him. And it's interesting to see how willing he is to engage these Dunsos, as long as these Dunsos are standing individually, and this is a problem for Lucifron. Lucifron tried holding this gold mine with individual Dunsos, but they're being picked apart by these Ghazi Raiders. When the dust settles, the destroyed value is dead even, 420 to 400, but VortiX has to feel very happy about these engagements. He made sure that Lucifron doesn't have a massive force of infantry, picked off a lot of individual units, and also managed to torch down the pit mine. Side note, of course, is that Lucifron is kind of confined into his base right now, so this allows VortiX to start securing sacred sites as well. And I want to touch on the fact that VortiX didn't just fight the Dunsos, he also picked off a lot of those javelin throwers. So right now we're looking at 2 javelin throwers available for Lucifron. One out there already, one in queue. And on the other side, we have archers coming up. Archers with a TOV buff. If Lucifron isn't able to keep those javelin throwers alive, he's going to be in big trouble here, because now he's heavily reliant on the pit mine. And if he loses access to the gold, he won't be able to replenish his javelin throwers, so he's going to start struggling very badly against those daily archers. For the time being, it looks like VortiX is just happy with the state of affairs. Will keep his forces back at home. He is going to have all 3 sacred sites, though. Part of this, of course, comes from the fact that he managed to decimate Lucifron's army early on. So right now, Lucifron's army isn't spectacular. Especially the lack of javelin throwers is what makes this very concerning for him. And now you gotta wonder if VortiX even wants to fight this. With 3 sacred sites and this raiding potential, he could just play the raiding game, force Lucifron to station some units back at home, and use this gold to go up to Castle Age. I'm actually wondering if that's the plan. He's definitely banking up a lot of food. Has 3 more Ghazi Raiders, 3 more Archers in queue, but he has a lot of gold to work with, and notably no market. If he wanted to stay in Feudal Age for long, he would make a market to sell, or well, to buy the resources with the gold, essentially sell his gold for other resources. And as long as that's not there, that's kind of a sign that he doesn't want to spend a lot of time in Feudal Age. I see this. VortiX, we gotta talk about this. This, folks, is a deleted mining camp here on the Deer Pack. Every time you feel like you know, use the wrong hotkeys, have accidental slip-ups in games, don't forget, sometimes pro players also misclick. That probably wasn't completed, by the way, probably was cancelled as it was being built. Anyway, that was definitely just a misclick from VortiX. Here come the Ghazi Raiders once again. I would be surprised if VortiX committed very heavily to this engagement. He's still very, very heavy on the Ghazi Raiders. I'm actually wondering if he has a market somewhere. I'm just not seeing it. Because his gold keeps disappearing. He's queuing up new scholars. But it's only the scholars that he's grabbing, plus some upgrades. Well, actually, never mind. Upgrades are free, of course, for him. So it has to be just scholars. Still, in a minute, he's going to have the resources for Castle Age, and he does have a respectable force as well. He shouldn't overcommit to this, though, I feel. I think he's better off just doing what he does right now, raiding. And the moment Lucifron moves out of his base, counterattack. He does have the mobility advantage with the Ghazi Raiders. If Lucifron moves out to decap the sacred sites, VortiX can dive his base. And as long as Lucifron is inside his own base, VortiX is more than happy having 3 sacred sites. Looks like VortiX is going to engage this, though. I am not a big fan of this fight, especially with the Ghazi Raiders fighting the Dunsos on the front line. But they do get a nice flank on the Javelin Throwers, and looks like VortiX is going to be happy to trade off army over here. Again, I'm not so sold on this engagement. I feel like this was a little overzealous. Frankly, I think it would have been better for VortiX to just stay back. It's a hard call because you don't want your opponent to build up their army that rapidly. But I feel like a Delhi player must be satisfied with 3 sacred sites. Now, the situation is the same, but your army is decimated, so your counterattack potential is much smaller. Of course, we see everything and players don't see everything, so maybe from VortiX's perspective, he felt like he needed to do more, which is often the case against the Malians, just given how much of a juggernaut the Malian eco is. And when you look at the eco, that's kind of the truth. Almost 1,000 food per minute, almost 1,000 gold per minute. I definitely understand why VortiX felt the need to do something more and dive this. But now you see, Lucifron can start moving out. And I feel like, as I said, the status quo of you having 3 sacred sites is actually pretty good. Especially because the countdown is down to 6.5 minutes. So in a few minutes' time, especially if Lucifron doesn't decap any of these, this becomes a realistic win condition. And the compound of the defender is going to be available to you, so you can start making keeps. Keeps will serve as town centers eventually, so you will have that option to quickly escalate your eco. I think it's still a tough matchup for the Delhi, make no mistake. But I feel like, as long as you can find the Malian player in their base, you have a decent shot at this with the Delhi. Castle Age on the way for VortiX. Lucifron is nowhere close, but he's decapping the sacred site, and the archers will be just a little too late to the party, perhaps. Oh my lord, that is annoying for VortiX. Means that the Sacred Site countdown is gone. Now, you might look at this and say, okay, whatever, he probably wouldn't have been able to hold it for 6 minutes anyways. You never know, folks. I've seen games where the countdown starts, you don't think it's realistic. Next thing you know, it becomes the primary win condition for a player. Second Sacred Site has also been decapped, so it does not matter anymore. VortiX has gotten a decent amount of gold from it, for sure. He's moving out for the relics as well, which I appreciate. And this is something that he needs to keep... building on. He does have all the map control right now. His opponent is barely moving out of his base. So what he wants to do is secure all the relics, or at least as many as he can. And if Lucifron moves out to decap the Sacred Sites, that's where he can swing in with the Ghazi Raiders to punish. Response to the Javelin Throwers and the Dunsos will be Men-at-Arms. We have 18 Q out there. Besides that, we don't have a spectacular army for VortiX, though. He does have some Archers, of course, no Castle Age upgrade just yet. Some Ghazi Raiders, same thing, still full Feudal. He needs some time until the Men-at-Arms numbers build up, but on the other side, I don't see a single Musafari warrior. It's a tricky setup, though, for VortiX, because that's a huge army for Lucifron. And it's an army against which Archers and Ghazi Raiders will struggle mightily. So as long as you don't have enough Men-at-Arms, and as long as the Javelin Throwers just pick them apart one by one, it's a terrible fight. Nice little swing in with the Ghazi Raiders, though Dunso's a little disconnected from there. Does a lot of damage on the Javelin Throwers, just what you need to eliminate the unit that can deal with the Men-at-Arms. Still, a lot of Javelin Throwers kept alive, but new Lancers are coming in and the Dunsos have been picked out. This little disconnect between the Javelin Throwers and the Dunsos allowed VortiX to take a decent fight here, and his heavily armored troops are now reigning supreme. There is no armor-piercing power over here for Lucifron, and his strength in his army was all in the power of being able to pick apart these Men-at-Arms with the Javelin Throwers from a distance. They are not a direct counter to Men-at-Arms, but when you have enough Javelin Throwers, it can be enough. But it looks like now the raw numbers are starting to favor VortiX here. Farimba Garrison on the way here for Lucifron. He wants to go to Castle, but it takes some time until he actually gets up to Castle Age. And more importantly, even if he does, he won't have the upgrades for these troops. Still no Musafari warriors, but even if he started mixing those in, he's now facing Archers and he doesn't have many Javelin Throwers. This is looking better and better for VortiX over here, pushing his opponent all the way back into his base. In the meantime, relics are being brought in as well by VortiX. He's going to be sitting on 5 relics potentially, 2 Sacred Sites as well, providing him a massive amount of gold income. Man-at-Arms once again taking this fight over here. No Musafari warriors from the other side. Archers did get their veterancy now, so they can focus those Dunsos quickly. And once the Dunsos are gone, Lancers will just dominate those Javelin Throwers. This combination looking really good here for VortiX. Diving deeper and deeper, now willing to take the fight under the town center. And besides this, again, it's not just the push into the base of Lucifron. It's also the fact that he has the Sacred Sites, he's got the relics. There are so many layers to the power of VortiX right now. Farimba Garrison actually placed in the middle. Wait a second. This must be a desperation move by Lucifron or a complete misclick. These ranches were set up such that you want the Grand Fulani Corral to be placed in the middle. It's either a misclick or more likely it was a deliberate move, realizing how bad his position is, but oh, that's very sad. You set up your base such that you build your Grand Fulani Corral, but you had to go for the Farimba Garrison, because otherwise you would have been overwhelmed by these troops. Now, granted, this Farimba Garrison is coming in clutch over here. With the help of the TC Fire, never mind, there it is. Lucifron is going to tap out of this one. VortiX securing game number 1. Big win over here. It is tough to call where this slipped for Lucifron, but I feel like it had to start with those initial units having been picked off. Because with those units picked off, Lucifron was very delayed moving out of his base, and by the time he started moving out of his base, his opponent was in Castle Age. VortiX was able to leverage those Sacred Sites before Lucifron even started moving out of his base, And then it just started snowballing out of control. That army moved out, and it just started picking apart the army that VortiX went out with. It was a feudal age army with no direct counter to men-at-arms, and eventually just the premium units overwhelmed the army here from Lucifron. That leaves us with a 1-0 lead for VortiX and Team Woman. As we will head into game number 2, we have Lucifron playing as the Abbasids, and VortiX is going to be in command of the Chinese. These are recorded games, folks, so I will not have much of a break in between the games. Lucifron with a 1-0 deficit now, VortiX with the lead. VortiX is going to be playing as the blue Chinese, and on the other side, Lucifron is going to be playing as the yellow Abbasids. The map we are on is Lipany, a very, very classic Abbasid map, but in many ways, Chinese have been the counterpick to Abbasids in such setups. Abbasids love to play on berries, they love to play on that multi-TC approach that they love so much. But Chinese also love those types of games, and this is one of those setups where Chinese will be more than happy to play a slow game, simply because if the game goes long, Chinese late game should dominate this one. At the same time, Chinese also have a lot of potential to put early pressure on the enemy. So you can use Mass Chukonu to punish a very eco-focused Abbasid player. I think this matchup is not good for the Abbasids, but there is a window in which they can prevail, and I think that's the early mid-Castle Age window, especially with archers using composite bows, some lancers potentially, Gulam of course. As long as the Chinese player doesn't have a lot of Nest of Bees, they are probably exposed to the Gulam plus Archer combination coming from the Abbasids. House of Wisdom hasn't been built. I'm not sure if that was just a misclick or like a weird move from the shift click. But whatever. There's the House of Wisdom being built, so no delays over there. Other side, standard Chinese build as well from VortiX. He is on the sheep, he's also on the gold. Looking at his map, his gold mine is not so spectacular, but it's definitely defendable if he was to the west. At the same time, backup gold mines aren't spectacular either. Looking at Lucifron, his gold mines are a lot more open, and it's going to be difficult to defend them. And I think a lot is going to come down to players being able to secure this middle crossing. This area of the map is just such a narrow choke point, and it could definitely be one of the key areas where fights happen. I think flanks will be somewhat relevant, but when the cliffs are so big and the passages are so narrow on the flanks and so easily wallable, fights usually happen in the middle of the map. Military Wing is the landmark, quote-unquote landmark of choice here for Lucifron. No surprise about that one. Definitely the most popular landmark or age-up method for the Abbasids nowadays. Gives you 2 spearmen, 2 archers. It's a combination that you can use to harass the enemy early on, hit the gold mine. In the case of the Chinese, maybe even harass the villagers on the berries. It's going to be a little bit difficult to accomplish that because you do have a large range for the TC. But the gold mine is definitely a prime target. So is the stone mine. And I think here in this setup specifically, the stone mine is what matters for Lucifron. If he wants to play a multi-TC game and he's afraid of the Chinese just mirroring that approach, he can hit this stone mine with the archers and the spearmen and delay the town center from his opponent. Of course, VortiX can still go for Song Dynasty first, clean this up, and then do a second TC. But in a setup where both players want to go multiple TCs, if you want to, or if you can delay the expansion of your opponent to stone, you can actually have a very nice head start when it comes to building up your economy. Barbican is going to be the second landmark that VortiX is aging up with, goes directly into the Song Dynasty. So by the time these spears and archers arrive, this Barbican should be able to defend the gold mine. And given the spawn of this forest, it also makes it very difficult for these units to just bypass this landmark. it will be difficult for Lucifron to hit the back of the eco. The only way that he can get into the back nicely is through the north, I feel. Feudal Age and Song Dynasty now in for VortiX. No signs of him moving towards stone though, and as you see, Lucifron's first thing to do is checking out the stone. Is my opponent on stone? Is he going to mirror my second TC build? He himself is on stone, and this is going to be scouted by VortiX. So both players are very well aware of each other's moves. Lumbercamp had to be repositioned here by VortiX. He was harassed by the archers from the north, and I think Lucifron knows that his opponent wants to go 2 TCs. This is a very heavy commitment to lumberjacking from VortiX, and this is usually done when you don't have access to your stone just yet, but you will want the second town center. So right now VortiX is piling up wood so he can get a range. Once he has the range, he can get some Chukunu out to clean this up with, and then he piles up the wood before moving on to stone to get to the second TC. But the timing is going to be very delayed on it. Assuming that he even does it, we might just see 1 TC from him at this point. But Lucifron definitely has a head start when it comes to building the second TC, and he's going to be quick to open with a stable as well. This is a little precarious for VortiX, because I feel like by the time VortiX would be ready to move out for a stone, he would start encountering horsemen. Now, Mass Chukunu does beat horsemen, but you really need overwhelming numbers here from the Chukunu. If you do not have that numbers advantage, horsemen will just decimate your troops. Range is well on the way for Lucifron. He's also very heavy on gold, but this is not going to be for Castle Age. This is likely for eco upgrades, given that he's missing wheelbarrow, he's missing double broadaxe, also horticulture. Plus, of course, he doesn't have any blacksmith upgrades either. So right now, these gold miners, they're just here to grab some techs. Survival techniques, of course, coming in big as well, given that he's heavy on the hunt. And it seems like this is just gonna be a classic full Chukunu build here from VortiX. Yeah, with the third range having been dropped, it's pretty clear that he doesn't want to move towards the stone anymore. This is one of the ways that Chinese can beat the Abbasids. As I said, there are 2 options, I feel. You can either go match their TC build-up and just play long, or you can go super aggressive and overwhelm them with mass Chukunu. The key thing here for VortiX is that he's got 1 shot at this. If he takes a bad fight where he loses most of his Chukunu, there is going to be no second fight after that. So here, all comes down to him being able to deal with this force that Lucifron is making, which is already going to be comprised of horsemen and archers. Unless VortiX has overwhelming numbers, this isn't going to work well. But looks like he will. And I honestly like this build a lot. This is definitely much more of an aggro build, but knowing VortiX, knowing that he's definitely this more aggro-style player, I'm not surprised about this. If this was some other player playing against the Abbasids, we would probably see 2 TCs. But VortiX knows his aggression, and he's going to move in. Shuts down the berries. Sees the horseman, that's a critical piece of information. Now knows that he needs something against that, or he needs to group up his units. Because if he doesn't, this is exactly what's going to happen. Kind of a deja vu from the previous game, just the other way around. Initial cavalry picking off individual infantry units. But Chukunu, don't underestimate them, especially when you have the Steeled Arrow upgrade already. Triple range is coming in here for VortiX. It's also very heavy on the lumberjacking. This might be a little dicey for Lucifron. This is definitely a window where Abbasids are vulnerable. And right now the villager count is dead even. It takes some more time for the Abbasids to pull ahead when it comes to villagers. Eventually they will, and beginning late Feudal Age, this setup is actually favoring the Abbasids. But until then, VortiX has a nice window here. And he doesn't want to mess around, he's going siege engineering straight away. This is definitely a position of weakness for Lucifron. All the production buildings quite undefended. If a ram push comes in here, Lucifron has to fight this because he needs to keep the production buildings alive. The ram has been seen by Lucifron. Now he knows what's coming his way. He's also waiting for the ranged defense upgrade. And he does have 4 horsemen out there with 2 more in queue. On the other side, 21 Chukanu already. This is just such a mad build, man. Here comes the first batch. VortiX would be wise to wait for the reinforcements to come in, because the magical number against kind of this cavalry size would be probably around 20. Once you have 20 Chukanu, you gotta be cautious if you're Lucifron engaging this. Lucifron himself, he knows that a critical fight is going to be coming in. He's grabbing boot camp, he's building up mass archers. We talked about the perspective of VortiX here. It's an all-in assault, kind of a one-shot type of a thing, trying to find a window in which the Abbasids are still weak. For Lucifron, it's all about survival. He needs to stall this push out. If he stalls it out and takes this to late Feudal Age, he's going to have all the tools he needs to win this game. Melee defense coming in just at the right time over here. Rams knocking on the production buildings. This is what I was talking about. You need these buildings for Lucifron. He is going to be forced to fight this. For now, he's going to send the cavalry to intercept the reinforcements. A clever move. Quick reaction from VortiX to regroup. But you see, this isolates the two groups of Chukanu. Love this little move to send the Chukanu to the south to kind of pull away the cavalry from the main battle group. Production buildings will actually be sacrificed over here. I'm not so sure about that for Lucifron. Has to now rebuild this, but his wood bank is down to just one. Fight in the middle. Quite some Chukanu out here. VortiX should retreat here once again. Needs some more reinforcements to fight this. But at the same time, he's getting good value for this party here. And Lucifron is out of food. This could be catastrophic for Lucifron. He does a great job cleaning his reinforcements up, but he's also losing his own cavalry. And I don't think he's going to have the tools to rebuild that cavalry. He's got 4 more in queue with 6 cavalry on the field. But his food income is going to plummet very badly. In fact, he only has villagers on sheep, that's it. Fight to the south of the gold mine. Chukanu sent out to deal with the archers. Villagers being rallied over here to take this. Some of the Chukanu will just be willing to pick off the villagers one by one. And reinforcements are nowhere to be found for VortiX. This might be enough for Lucifron. VortiX has to retreat, and this is what I was referring to. This is a one-shot thing for VortiX. He needs one decisive push with the Chukanu. But if individual waves of Chukanu are cleaned up, then he will never have the critical mass to overpower mass archers and horsemen. Still, Lucifron is kind of tight on food, and that could be a weakness still exploited by VortiX. In fact, VortiX, he does see the villagers rushing out for the hunt. This is a clear indication that Lucifron is struggling for food, and that becomes the primary objective now for VortiX. But the Chukanu have been cleaned up, and I feel like this is the moment where things get very bad for VortiX. Losing that many Chukanu is just not something that you can afford or justify. It was the right move from Lucifron to come in, intercept the reinforcements, and that's exactly what he did. He cleaned up the Chukanu back at home with the archers, and sacrificed the horsemen to make sure that no reinforcements come in. But this means that VortiX never had this critical mass of Chukanu that can just annihilate cavalry and archers alike. And now we're looking at raw numbers, almost dead even. And this composition is a lot better for Lucifron. Has a unit that soaks up arrow fire, the horsemen, and archers also outrange Chukanu, so there is also that element in there. And now VortiX is on stone. I think he understands that he can no longer win this game in Feudal. Needs to go on a second TC. What's good for him is that he's only down by 7 villagers, so there's still a way to salvage this. But once again, he's caught off guard over here by the horsemen. I think his vision was very limited because of the stealth forest. Didn't see the full extent of Lucifron's army, and Lucifron is now cleaning things up here. This should not be a game that VortiX wins. Beautiful cleanup, and now Lucifron can punish basically no army available for VortiX once this gets cleaned up. This is exactly how you want to play Abbasid defense against a Chukanu build like this. Intercept the reinforcements, and never let the Chukanu mass reach that critical amount. That's exactly what Lucifron did. That is what secures the first game for his team on the board, at least by him. Lucifron evening things out here, making this series 1-1. Again, as we are getting ready for game number 3, big shout out goes to Don Artie for putting this tournament together. This is Team Whammon versus Team Core. players are playing 1v1s according to the matchups that you see on the right side. VortiX is playing Lucifron. Each game is worth a single point. If you win, you get a point. This means that you can get up to 25 points in an entire series. The team that gets the majority of those points, that is 13, is going to be the team that advances into the grand finals. So Lucifron taking the victory here with the Abbasids against VortiX. Now we'll be heading into game number 3. That is going to be Himayana. And it looks like we have Lucifron with the Ottomans and VortiX playing with Jushi's Legacy. Jushi is probably the civilization, at least from the new civilizations, that I've cost the least game from, but I'm definitely hyped to see them here, as we'll hop into Himayana. Right side is going to be VortiX playing as the blue Jushi, and on the left side, Ottomans is going to be the civilization of choice for Lucifron's yellow. Now, this is an intriguing opening because I do see a villager moving out here for Lucy. I love this mind game. So when you look at this civilization setup, if you are the player facing the Ottomans, you're hesitant to move in the middle because you know that the Ottomans will have spearmen coming out to torch down your buildings, either from barracks or from military schools. So what's the concept here for Lucifron? He's doing something that's somewhat unpredictable. Instead of going for his own spearmen, he's just going to build on the fact that his opponent is probably afraid of those, building this own dock in the middle. I love this move. And I think, like you see, VortiX had no desire to go towards the middle. Of course, he does have an Imperial Officer right from the get-go with Jushi, so he does have this boost on the mill immediately. Probably doesn't make a lot of sense to move out towards the middle for him. But I think a lot of this comes down to the fact that he is respecting the Ottomans' ability to deny that dock or burn it down early on, and he just doesn't want to contest this spawn for the time being. But this means that Lucifron is grabbing a freebie over here with this dock. He's going to have a villager on shorefish, he's going to have some fishing boats to work with, and this time around, he doesn't have a military school to work with, so no spearmen, no nothing for the time being. But it also means that he didn't have to invest his stone, and it also means that he didn't have to invest a ton of wood into that military school. For now, Dark Age is very standard over here for VortiX. He does have his gold mine all the way at the back, but the back of his base is somewhat open. It might be vulnerable depending on what kind of map control he has, how much he's leaving his base, but it definitely takes some effort to wall this base, especially the southern flank. Kind of the same applies for VortiX, same thing. Southern flank is very, very open. Big difference between the two is that VortiX does have both of his gold mines close to each other and kind of tucked away at the back. Whereas for VortiX, did I say VortiX before? It is Lucifron, who does have the two gold mines close to each other. And then VortiX, he does have his primary gold at the back of his TC, and then the secondary gold is kind of offset to the north. Quite some fishing going on over here for Lucifron. Now, if VortiX plays this slow with the Chinese, which I don't think he will, this fishing is going to pay off very quickly. On the other hand, just seeing the previous game and seeing that, Jushi is a massive civilization when it comes to the Chukanu build, I just feel like VortiX is going to try to replicate something very similar to the previous game. Meditation Gardens is coming up all the way to the north. Villagers have to walk out here, and this is a dicey call. Let's credit VortiX for this one, though. This comes through very thorough scouting. No spearmen coming from the Ottomans. He can afford to walk out here. But this is a dangerous position by default. A lovely spot nonetheless. It touches the berries, it touches the wood. It even touches the hitbox of the gold, as you can see. Same for the stone. So this landmark is going to give passive resources from all 4 resources, which is definitely some good value. What we're going to use that for, I'm not so certain yet. But just knowing how aggressive VortiX likes to play this game, I genuinely think that this is going to be an aggro play. Probably heavy Chukunu, if I have to bet. And that could work very nicely against the Ottomans, because the Ottomans are not known for building an army quickly. Ottomans are known for building an army very effectively over the course of a longer time frame. And the best way to prevent that one from happening is being very aggressive and forcing engagements before they can really leverage the power of those military schools. 1 or 2 Sipahis won't save the day against 20 Chukanu. So it's going to be interesting to see how Lucifron responds to that. But the military schools, in and of themselves, will be insufficient to deal with the full Chukanu aggression, I feel. Minaret complete. On the other side, Feudal Age is in as well for VortiX. He hasn't yet shifted towards the wood, though, and it looks like this is going to be a fast castle. You can actually see him piling up resources for this one. Barely any villagers on wood. He's rushing castle here. Now, I'm not against this either. Could be an intriguing option, especially if he wants to yoink most of the relics. I think that's going to be the plan in this case, and Lucifron knows what's happening. He's going to start walling in the relics. Realistically, he should be able to wall this one in and this one. Maybe the one to the north as well. But this is going to be annoying for VortiX. His rush to Castle Age is exclusively built around the fact that he wants to get the relics. And you see, Shaolin monks, the concept with this unit is that you have a unit, a monk-style unit that's capable of picking up relics, and also it's a unit that's capable of fighting off some enemies. So when your opponent only has a handful of spearmen, which is right now just 1 spear to be precise, the Shaolin monks can easily deal with that. This means that you're guaranteed quite some relics because a small group of units from the enemy won't stop you from collecting those. The only way that Lucifron can prevent the relics from being taken is by walling them in, and that's exactly what he's doing. Now, 2 relics being walled in is decent value, but you probably want to secure at least 1 more if you're Lucifron. Here comes the Shaolin Monk. Side note is that Shaolin Monks cost food, not gold. So that's actually an interesting thing to look at. I didn't even know this. I think it's the only religious unit that's going to cost you food. I mean food exclusively. This relic is untouched, so VortiX should be able to yoink that. The one to the south is also not walled in, and I don't see a villager moving out from Lucifron either. 3 relics is gonna be a good pickup still. Especially when you consider that you also have the meditation gardens for some passive resource income. And you have multiple IOs already out there boosting your resource income. And I see stone. So this is going to be a delayed 2TC build from VortiX. Normally, when you look at Chinese build orders, it's Song Dynasty into a 2TC build, then Castle Age. But this time around, this is going to be a fast castle 2TC. And the concept is that you want to leverage those relics with the Shaolin monks. I like this a lot for VortiX, because especially with 2 of those relics having been walled in, I don't think that grabbing just 3 relics as opposed to what will be eventually 2 for your opponent, I don't think that justifies rushing a Castle Age. And don't forget, you're giving a lot of breathing room for the Ottomans. Breathing room that they can use to build a massive force of Sipahi and spearmen even. Key point, you're giving time for the Ottomans to build their army. Let's look at the Shaolin Monk, by the way. Get away from my shrine. Shrine? It's more like meditation gardens, but it looks like a shrine. Alright, folks. It's well scouted by Lucifron that... Oop, Vololo coming in here. Sipahi cannot engage this. He's gonna have to come back for another run, but the relic is pretty close to the base of VortiX, and VortiX is gonna be like, yeah, you wanna fight? I don't think this is the good choice from him, because the second Sipahi is coming in, but there is gonna be a Shaolin Monk that could heal, potentially. Monkey Monk. There we go. There's the heal, and the monks should be able to bring back the majority of the relics. Dicey spot for a TC over here. I don't think that Lucifron has vision on this because he doesn't have a scout nearby. But if he finds this, this could be annoying for VortiX. Looks like he's going to get away with that TC spot. VortiX also going for the sacred sites here. He's facing an increasing amount of Sipahi. And Castle Age is also going to be on the way for Lucifron. I am not a big fan of this build, to be honest, from VortiX. The problem with the fast castle relic play is that you need to justify that fast castle by securing a lot of relics, because you're making a big investment into that castle age so early. That investment has to come back from something, and that something has to be the relics. At the same time, the second TC also takes some time to pay off, and given that this was just now completed by VortiX, it's going to take a solid 5 to 10 minutes until this actually pays for itself. Probably not 10, closer to 5, but it's going to be like 7-8 minutes until VortiX starts to see the benefits of having a second TC compared to his opponent. At the same time, Castle Age is coming in for Lucifron. He's going to yoink the 2 relics as well, but he wasn't idle in Feudal, he was building military schools. He does have quite some Feudal Age units out there now, units that will be upgraded instantly. He's actually shifting the military schools to crossbows. And he's going to have those relics in as well. Behind this, he also had some fishing eco. He had these for quite some time. So overall, I like the position of Lucifron a lot better here. Shaolin Monks are no joke, by the way. They have 15 base attack, but they should not be able to do much against heavy Castle Age units like the Lancers. They are trying to yoink the relics still, but once the Lancers arrive, they should not make it back home. You still gotta be cautious, because these guys will beat you up, man. Their attack speed is also very high. It's 0.75 seconds. Oh, look at this, though. Lucifron, cheeky as ever. He says, look, you can burn your way through the walls. I'm just gonna have a demo there. Good luck picking that up. There is a bait Monk being brought in. The demo does hit it. Monk survives at low HP, but the Knights arrive. And as much as you can deal with the Sipahi using your little sticks, you won't be able to do that with the Knights. Shaolin Monks will be taken out. Just a classic little skirmish between the 2 Spanish brothers here. So lovely to see. The cheekiness, the micro, the innovativeness. You know, I got a response to everything you have, and then, of course, you have a response to everything I have. Shaolin Monks pushing away the Sipahi. There's a demo to prevent it. Knights arrive in time. Love the mind games of this game so far. A lot of walls coming in here for VortiX. He knows that he's facing a lot of cavalry, and his own army is spearmen and a single monk. So he needs to kind of just secure his position over here as the Lancers actually do make it into his base. He's likely setting up for a late game at this point, saying, okay, if you want to play this game, we'll be playing this in a long game, because I'm more than happy with Jushi late game, which is an absolute monstrosity. A Jushi late game, it's terrifying. So for Lucifron, he needs to make something happen quickly over here. But I think this is his best window right now. He's got a lot of free production from the military schools. He's about to get the first mangonel out from the armory. He can actually start picking up the relics himself. The Imam is just now moving out. He even stops the wall from being finished. Some Lancers made it in here. Spearman chasing out some Chukun, who will also be mixed in. Decent engagement for VortiX, takes out the Scout. Does a lot of damage to the Meter and the Knights. But there's also this Pond as well, which is a great kind of fortified position, I would say, for the Lucifron. Not in a direct way, but the fact that you can make some combat ships here, some demos maybe, makes it a lot more difficult for VortiX to take fights nearby. So this is definitely a good rally point right now for Lucifron to have. More military schools, more racks on the way. At the same time, there is a rapid build-up of eco now from VortiX. He's ahead by 6 villagers. Of course, don't forget, he does have the relic lead as well. On the other hand, Lucifron is getting a lot of units for free, so the 2 things kind of cancel out for the time being. Farm transition on the way right now for VortiX. It's going to be a very nice and safe farming eco at the back. Though I would love to see some wars here. I feel like right now, His eco is still exposed from the north, but it seems like Lucifron has no desire to do anything with that. Instead, he wants to force his opponent out of his base by capturing both sacred sites. He gets just that as a response from VortiX. VortiX moves up to the north, trying to prevent his opponent from decapping the sacred site, and the decap will not happen. Crossbows arrive just in time. Actually, those are Chukunu. No, those are crossbows. So Sacred Site remains under the control of VortiX for the time being. This also kind of acted as a diversion as well, because now Lucifron can try to probe the south. Little skirmishes to the south over here. Chukanu numbers aren't rising, crossbows are. Most of what Lucifron has is heavy troops. Lancers, men-at-arms, he only has a handful of archers. Quite some archers are moving in now, and there's a Mangonel too. Mangonel, of course, has to come in clutch. Not a single nest of bees from VortiX, no springboards, no nothing. His siege and anti-siege are completely missing from the battlefield right now. Lucifron gets a couple of Lancers into the enemy eco. That's a lot of villagers that could be exposed at the back. This is the perfect diversion for Lucifron. If he hits those farmers, VortiX will be forced to respond, and that's a window that he can use to push a little deeper here. Maybe even start torching down the Shaolin Monastery and start taking away the relics. Here come the Lancers. Indeed, villagers have to flee. A reaction from VortiX is quick and clean. I love how he's only pursuing this with a handful of spears, and he's keeping the rest of his forces available to fight. Lancers trying to pick off the IOs. Not finding much of a success over there, but VortiX, he's going to be pushed very heavily over here. Spearmen flanking around from behind, trying to jump on the Mangonel. Archers found a nice little choke point over there, but the Mangonel is still undefended. Spearmen, though, not having a massive amount of damage output, cannot really finish off the Mangonel. And now VortiX eats a big Mangonel shot. A second Mangonel shot could be devastating over here. Second Mangonel shot coming in, partially dodged, but still does a lot of damage on that force from VortiX. Heavy casualties for him, and with the next volley coming out, this group of crossbows is just so heavily decimated. On the other side, crossbows from VortiX held the ground for the time being. Archers moving in, no direct response from VortiX to the archers. He's got spears, he's got Chukanu, he's got crossbows. None of those deal well with the archers, but VortiX does have the numbers advantage. So for the time being, it looks like he's gonna be able to hold this. He's starting to pull ahead when it comes to eco, triple granaries. 73 eco against 57. He does have 3 relics as well as a sacred site. On the other side, 2 relics and a sacred site. And I don't see much of a farm transition completed so far by Lucifron. He's on a serious timer as a consequence. When he runs out of food, his momentum is going to shrink very badly. A lot of crossbows still there for VortiX. He does have the numbers advantage. Lucifron does have enough stove for a keep, though. I'm starting to feel like we're going to see a very aggressive keep. Once... Oh, there it is. Come on, that is such an aggressive keep. I can tell you, 7 out of 10 players wouldn't do it in this game. But VortiX and Lucifron are definitely on the more aggressive side of things, as when it comes to their playstyle at least. And oh, this is bad for VortiX. He doesn't have his army in position. This keep is going to be constructed to like 30% before VortiX moves in. He can easily stop this. He's got like triple the numbers here. But his army was slightly mispositioned, and now this keep is half completed. If he focuses the vills, he's gonna get picked apart. If he doesn't, the keep goes up. That army being mispositioned could actually cost the game here for VortiX. Keep is close to completion, and boy, oh boy, as aggressive as this keep was, it's paying off. I'm not gonna lie, I did not think that VortiX can finish this. Sure enough, you have 24 archers here with a Meter buff. But if this army was in position, many of the villagers would have been picked apart before the reinforcements come in. Now it's catastrophic for VortiX. He still has no response to mass archers. And there is a keep right next to his starting town center now. Siege Workshop on the front line will be ready to start pumping out some trebs or potentially rams. And don't forget, the Shaolin Monastery, it's also exposed over here. If this gets taken down, VortiX is going to lose all the relics as well. He's floating a lot of resources, not sure what exactly he wants to spend that on. Also has a lot of stone, maybe a defensive castle is on the menu very soon. Meteor needs to be focused down here by VortiX if he wants to have any shot at this fight. Looks like Lucifron is going to call it a day for the time being. But he keeps pushing VortiX back and back. VortiX needs a strong point, and that has to be a keep somewhere around over here, perhaps. Stone Miners will be exposed. Lucifron knows that his opponent wants a keep. Military Academy as well. VortiX is super heavily reliant on the crossbows. 51 crossbows, 15 spearmen, now making Chukanus. Chukanus can salvage this. Mass Chukanu, at least. It's definitely capable of pushing this back. I still believe you need some sort of a fortification over here for VortiX. So keep maybe here. Yeah, that's probably the best spot by a mile. Ram's on the way as well for VortiX. He wants to push this one before the Chukanu arrive. I think he would benefit a lot more from waiting a little more. Mangonel Fire, though, repelling his infantry. And this whole army is clustered up like this. Mangonel Fire could just decimate them in an instant. No Springles from him. Rams rolling towards the castle over here. Mangonel Fire standing strong. Archers, of course, buffed by the Meteor as well, contributing heavily to this engagement. And I just feel like the Mangonel plus Archer Fire is way too much to handle here for VortiX. His numbers are disappearing from the field. You can clearly tell that Lucifron has a counter unit to all these crossbows. These crossbows aren't meant to fight the archers, and now VortiX's army is just gone. VortiX tapping out of this one, making this a 2-1 lead with 2 consecutive wins for Lucifron. What a lovely game from Lucy here. He really did what he had to secure this game. I think the castle placement was even more aggressive than I would have thought it would be. It was a very, very ambitious castle. That castle could have lost him the game if things went badly. If his opponent had 2 Nest of Bees and 2 Springles to support this, that castle never goes up and that might lose the game for Lucifron. At the same time, you just see why Lucifron and VortiX are so powerful as players. They have this very aggressive killer instinct. If they see a weakness, they'll exploit it. They won't play for the long games, they will play for a killing blow. And we have seen that from VortiX in game number 2 when it comes to using the Chugenu, as well as, of course, then Lucifron finishing off the game. But we've also seen this now in this game from Lucifron taking out the Jushi Legacy Civilization before it really became a powerful force to be reckoned with. With that, we're going to get onto Rocky River, with VortiX spawning in on the northern side as the color blue. Lucifron is going to be with the yellow color to the south of the map, opening up with the barracks as English. Mongols versus English, of course, civilization matchup where both civilizations are capable of making Dark Age infantry, spearmen, and men-at-arms respectively. In this case, of course, the Mongols will probably want to play with horsemen because spearmen makes little sense against men-at-arms. But it's all going to come down to you denying the opponent from docking, or potentially you being denied from a dock in the middle. Although, to be honest, if either of these players are afraid of the enemy just taking out their docks, they might just completely bail on the idea of dropping a dock, like we've seen VortiX do in the previous game. Lucifron, he's going heavy on the men-at-arms here. This is just such a strong push. 3 men-at-arms is a massive investment in Dark Age, folks. So the fact that he's going for it means that this needs to work. Down center, I think this is one of those setups where I think if VortiX sees this men-at-arms aggression, he might want to pack his TC and move it a little closer. Because if he does that, the men-at-arms cannot torch down the Ovu or the stable. And then this entire men-at-arms investment goes down the drain. It looks like the men-at-arms are heading to the flank. They might be looking for a dock over here. Goes to show that Lucifron is trying to preemptively take out any docks or any villagers that might be moving to dock. And the primary objective of the men-at-arms wasn't to destroy the Ovu. Now, VortiX knows that something must be coming his way, despite not having scouted the enemy base. These guys, of course, know each other very well as well. They know each other's playstyles, so there is probably that suspicion from VortiX that Lucifron is going to come up with some English men-at-arms. Men-at-arms have been hidden for the time being, but this scout is actually bringing those horsemen right next to the men-at-arms. Now, men-at-arms know what's up as well. Horsemen just flank around here. They have no desire to fight the men-at-arms. Instead, they're heading towards the gold mine. That's a smart move. English cannot make spearmen in Dark Age. And that means that the horsemen, you can only deal with them using the men-at-arms. Boar is actually being aggroed here. I don't think it can range this villager, but if it can, that can easily be game-ending even. Looks like instead it's going to be the horsemen diving in on the villager, and I think they have enough firepower to get rid of the Veil. Dock very close to completion, but the villager goes down before the dock is completed. Oh, that's just very sad for Lucifron. He needs to send the villager to finish that. There's just no way. He cannot afford to let this dock slip out of his hands. He invested very heavily into the men-at-arms, needs to get something for it. This villager is going to cross paths with the boar, by the way. And as long as this boar is here, Lucifron cannot actually walk out here. Boar being aggroed once again. VortiX using that to his advantage. Keeps denying the dock from his opponent. Villager now moving in. Khan is going to spot that this villager is way too defenseless. Boar is also moving in. Boar gets 15 damage done to that villager with a single hit. And a horseman will finish this. A second villager goes down here from Lucifron. And there it is. A GG has been called. So quick, so swift. Again, just a spectacle when it comes to the matchup of these two players. Tiny things, micro battles. That's what this matchup is so well known for. And this game was no different from that. Lucifron tried to play a fairly standard game over here. Go for the dock, go for the man-at-arms. And VortiX said, look, we are going to turn this into a micro-arena. I'm going to come in with my horseman. I'm going to aggro the boar. Even if the boar wasn't there, the first villager was taken out exclusively by the horseman. Second one was also heavily damaged. I think the boar contributed, but I think it wasn't just about the boar. This was just a pure micro-battle between the two. And the fact that the English don't have access to the spearmen in Dark Age means that you have no tools to kill those horsemen quickly. The men-at-arms, even if they are close to the horsemen will just kill the villager and then disengage. They will still have half of their HP left. That leaves us with a 2-2 scoreline. One more game left over here. Of course, once again, big shout-out goes to Don Artie for putting this tournament together. Both players have contributed with 2 points towards their respective teams. I will put a link down in the description to Don Artie's socials as well. Make sure you check him out because this tournament has been so much fun to watch when it comes to the individual games. And it has also been very, very fun being the team captain of the Rongo Enjoyers. With that being said, let's jump straight into game number 5 here. We are going on to Gorge with VortiX spawning in on the right side with the Order of the Dragon. The other side is going to be Lucifron playing as the Japanese in yellow. Very new school setup over here, and look what we have for Lucifron. Stone taken right at the beginning. This is one of those matchups where, you know, definitely not one where you are familiar with how things are going to play out. Brand new civilizations, of course, on both sides. But if I would have to guess, I would say I like the Order of the Dragon a lot more beyond Castle Age. Order of the Dragon, it's all about getting some of those super high value premium units out. Knights, Gilded Knights those are, or even Gilded Horsemen. Now, when it comes to the Japanese, in many ways, it's like English on steroids. You have a powerful Feudal Age push. If you go for the Kura Storehouse, you can actually play into an archer build, archer plus spearman style build. And you can sustain that production very well because the Kura Storehouse gives you a very consistent food income through the farms. That has been a tendency so far by players, but With Lucifron going heavy on the Forge, what he's actually doing is trying to get the Daimyo upgrade. And here is why I think he's doing this. I think he wants to go for the Cavalry Bannerman, the Uma Bannerman that is. And the Uma Bannerman acts as a proxy Knight. We know that Lucifron loves Knight Micro, and he's actually one of the best players in the world when it comes to Knight Micro. I think this could be one of those setups where he goes for a single Uma Bannerman as a proxy raiding unit, maybe as a direct response to a Gilded Horseman from the other side, and then maybe we're going to see some sort of a fast castle behind this, or a 2TC build. But the fact that he's so heavy on the stone definitely makes me think that he wants to get the Daimyo Manor upgrade quickly. We'll have to see though, because he's still on stone. Yep, there it is. For a moment I was confused, but I just don't see him gathering stone for a second TC in Dark Age. It would make zero sense to do that. On the other side, Aachen Chapel is the landmark of choice. 4 Dragon Villagers committed to that. It's actually a big commitment. That's a very quick feudal from VortiX. And when we talk about the order, we have to talk about the gilded units, of course. So far, the playstyle by pro players with the Order of the Dragon was that they go for a couple of Gilded Horsemen, and they use them as semi-knights, and they kind of serve that role. They have an HP slightly lower than ordinary knights in feudal. They have... Actually, they might have more HP than knights do, but they do have lower armors, so that kind of cancels out. Anyways, they are pretty tanky units as long as you don't engage with spearmen or you don't take a lot of arrow fire. And they also have a decent damage output, slightly lower than what it is for knights, but it's definitely that knight-style raiding unit, something that only takes a handful of hits to kill a villager. And I think I know what Lucifron is up to. I think he actually wants the Daimyo Palace straight away. Daimyo Palace would actually give you additional Bannermen, and he might just play with a handful of Uma Bannermen for the time being. He doesn't need a lot of units because the Order isn't going to bring in a lot of units either. If this was against another civilization, a civ like, let's say, the French, which can split up their cavalry, I don't think this would work well. But here in this case, I think because the Order will only have a handful of cavalry units anyways, you can get a couple of Bannermen out to match that, and then those Bannermen will shield you until you get to the next phase, which I'm not exactly sure what it will be. Although it looks like he stopped mining stone, so there is going to be a second TC after all. I thought he's going to play Daimyo Palace here and just get the second Bannerman slot, but that's not going to be the case. That many stone in the bank, that's a second town center. It's still going to be probably Bannerman into a second TC, but there's the Kura storehouse, of course. The Slumber Camp is kind of blocking some spots, which is not great. Same for the town center, I do believe. But you will still have some farms for free. And that makes me love this landmark, to be honest. This landmark, I think, provides so much sustainability and so much versatility for your eco that I think this is probably going to be the dominant landmark to go for. It already is, but I think this is going to remain this way for players playing the Japanese. VortiX. For the time being, he's playing standard HRE here, no surprise on that front. When you look at himself, he's actually playing 2 TCs. Oh man, 2 TC HRE, not something I've seen for a while. VortiX has to kill the deer before it gets spread out by the scout of Lucifron. That's exactly what he does. It's actually interesting to see 2 TC HRE, which was a build that was pioneered by Lucifron actually back in the past. And it's a powerful build. I think it's an awfully underrated build. Because one of the things that you're getting with the HRE is emergency repairs. So it's actually very difficult for your opponent to do a ramp push against that expansion town center. And if you let the HRE do an eco boom, it's very difficult to stop them. HRE can even fortify this position with towers and cheap arrow slit emplacements. So it's actually very difficult to punish a 2 TC build from the HRE. Looks like we're going to have a second TC as well from Lucifron. It's a very exposed spot, but that's not catastrophic for the Japanese, because they can actually go for their own upgrades on the TC, so they will have these as kind of strong points. VortiX, for now, just doing standard HRE stuff here, moving on double TCs, but eventually we're going to see him going to Castle Age here. In fact, when you look at the food income and him sending villagers to gold, it makes me think that we are going to see Castle Age sooner rather than later. He's going to play a defensive tower here, but that's just kind of being a little overcautious. I like it a lot because that gold is very important for him. That's the only safe gold he has right now. So I like this tower quite a bit. But what's more important is having 5 villagers on this one. That's a clear indication for Lucifron that his opponent is going to play an early Castle Age here. Of course, some of that gold will go into eco upgrades, but if you keep 6-7 villagers on gold for quite some time, in Feudal Age at least, that is going to be an early Castle Age. And that's kind of logical from HRE. You want to get to Castle, you want to get the Gilded Knights here for the Order, also want to start picking up relics. Let's see how Lucifron responds to that. He's on 2 TCs only, has a stable though, so he's going to have, there it is, the Uma Bannerman. Expensive, but it's a Knight-style unit. And he's going to wall in the relics once again. We have seen that in game number 4, game number 3 actually. Walling in the relics. VortiX is going to see that, but it's not like he can do much against this. 2 relics will be walled in no matter what, but I think Lucifron has a chance to wall in additional relics as well, and there is the Bannerman. You see, the deflective armor means that the first hit it suffers from, it's going to be cancelled out. And now Lucifron is just going to disengage. So when you look at this unit, 28 Naginata damage, 18 Katana. Naginata is your charge attack, like you have for Knights, and then Katana is just your standard melee attack. It's kind of acting like a Knight-style unit. Of course, you're limited when it comes to the amount that you can make, but if you just want to poke around and harass a little, it's actually a great unit. He's actually waiting for the deflective armor. I think one of the things that we've seen in the previous fight from VortiX is actually hitting that Bannerman with a villager very early on to get rid of the actual deflective armor, allowing the tower to wipe this guy out. Love the micro, by the way, from VortiX, pulling back the weak veils, replenishing them with new ones. Of course, with the Order, he needs to make sure he doesn't lose any of those very expensive but valuable veils. And so far, it looks like Castle Age timings will be near identical. This Bannerman was able to slow down the gold income of VortiX a little, so VortiX might be a couple of seconds behind. But it's going to be essentially identical Castle Age timings. Big thing though, relics have been walled in already, at least most of them were. So by the time VortiX arrives to Castle Age, there won't be much to find, which makes me wonder if he wants to go up with the Burgrave Palace. He must have seen these walls, indeed he did, so he should know that most of the relics will be walled in. He might still think that this one and this one is a relic that he can grab, and he's right now, although those could still be walled in. But at the end of the day, there is a realistic chance that he wouldn't get any relics, so there might be some sort of a justification for playing Burgrave Palace here. A barracks was made here, so we have some Gilded Spearmen now moving out. Floating Gate on the way for Lucifron, and indeed, VortiX was slow to get the gold that he needed for this, probably because of that delay caused by the Uma Bannerman. And he's going up to the Regnitz Cathedral. I'm not against it. I think that's probably the better of the 2 landmarks for this matchup. But again, it really is reliant on... those relics being available. And 3 out of the 5 relics won't be available. In fact, I'm somewhat surprised that Lucifron didn't send a villager out here as well. Floating Gate has been completed, so now we have the Yorishiros available. Yorishiros have been deposited already, I do believe. Indeed, the stable does have the Yorishiros, so we have a very quick production of Horsemen and, of course, Mounted Samurai as well. We do have Castle Age, folks, it's just the POV messing things up. So we could see some Mounted Samurai, and they don't take much time to build. 12 seconds is not much time. There comes the first Mounted Samurai. Now this is big, this is very big, because this is a decent matchup for the Japanese. The deflective armor is going to cancel the first attack that comes in against the Mounted Samurai. This is something that has an amplified importance against the Order, because the Order does have these hard-hitting units, both the Gilded Spearmen, but more importantly, the charge of the Gilded Knights is what's devastating. you can essentially cancel that charge. And that makes it very, very valuable. This deflective armor ability means that those Gilded Knights won't be able to get their most powerful attack on you. At least, not unless you charge them with the armor not on right now. Because this is one thing right now. You see, deflective armor, that is that little white bar on top of the units, that has been cancelled with the town center shooting these units. So right now they will take full damage from that charge. But in an open field battle, that is a very valuable ability, you being able to cancel out the charge of the Gilded Knights. Knights are now coming in here to raid VortiX. There's the first Gilded Knight. There's a little trap over here, although this is a weird, weird wall. I'm not sure what happened here for VortiX, but it's definitely open. Nice little diversion here by Lucifron. He's pulling away the Gilded Spearman with the Horseman, and then swinging in with the Bannerman and the Mounted Samurai. The Bannerman is heavily damaged, but he does have a plus 15% attack buff for the cavalry. So this Samurai, this Mounted Samurai that is, it's terrifying. Once again, Scout being used to bait, and then Cavalry swings in. Just a lovely setup of micro once again between the two players. We keep seeing this over and over again between the two players. An endless micro war. I think mechanically, especially when you look at micro, we're looking at probably the two best players in AoE 4. Of course, you know, some people would dispute that, but let's be honest, micro from VortiX and Lucifron are absolutely terrifying. Naginata Raiders run at 1.62, by the way, just like the Knights, so they cannot catch up with these Gilded Knights. Needless to say is the fact that the Gilded Knights being so expensive, you cannot afford to lose them if you're VortiX. It's actually remarkable how well VortiX has defended against these raids. He only lost one villager in this entire game, despite Lucifron doing an exceptional job spreading out the defenses. And that's exactly what you need to do against the Order. The Order has a low amount of high-quality units, so you want to stretch their defenses out, try to come in from multiple angles. VortiX has done a terrific job shadowing the armies of Lucifron, and never letting him get any kind of raiding opportunities. As I say that, here comes a raid, finally. Another villager gets killed, but this is a little trap setup over here. Those Gilded Spearmen hit very hard, 40 bonus damage against Cav. They just eviscerate cavalry. Looks like we're going to have Yumi Ashigaru being mixed in here. I'm not sure if that's the right unit here, though. I think the Gilded Knights will clap the Naginata Samurai anyway. And at the same time, as much as Yumi Ashigaru are great, and they will take out the Spearman, Lucifron won't have any tools to deal with the Gilded Knights. Granted, he does have the Uma Bannerman, so his cavalry is a lot more powerful than usual. Looks like 3 relics will be the final count for Lucifron. On the other side, VortiX managed to secure 2, which is pretty admirable given how active Lucifron was to deny those relics. Little skirmish, Spearman pushing back the Samurai. What I would love to see from Lucifron is Onabugeisha, actually. Or Onamusha, beg your pardon. Onabugeisha is the infantry unit. Onamusha could be an interesting unit here. It would be very effective against the Gilded Knights, but it's also a mounted ranged unit, so it could actually just kite away from the Spearman. So it would be a good unit that can engage both of the units that VortiX is building his army on. We're up to 8 Gilded Knights. These guys are no joke. They are running forward, and I feel like VortiX is doing the right thing. He's actually trying to force an engagement here. Quite some Ashigaru are available. They can pick off the spears. And the Samurai numbers actually favor Lucifron here. 16 Mounted Samurai is no pushover either. Especially because you will be cancelling the charge attack of the actual Knights. Here come the Ashigaru. They pick off one of those spears. And now, Samurai here to chase. 14 Mounted Samurai available. And now the Onamusha are coming in. Love the passive play here from Lucifron, or at least the cautious play, I could I should call it, I guess. He does have the Sacred Sites, he does have the majority of the relics as well. But what's more important, I think, is that he has more to gain from waiting a little and building up some more forces than his opponent. Because right now, Lucifron is building up a counter unit to everything that VortiX has. And VortiX is just increasing his numbers. He isn't actually actively making counter units to anything that's there on the other side. He does have the Spearman, of course, to deal with the Mounted Samurai, but those Spearmen will disappear in an instant when encountering the Onamusha and the Archers. Especially because we have a Yumi Bannerman now as well. So the Yumi Archers are now pretty scary. The Onamusha are very scary. And as long as both the Uma Bannerman and the Yumi Bannerman are available, it's going to be a tough fight for VortiX. These are also now very high quality units as well. You see, 44 Naginata damage from the charge. That actually matches the charge damage from the Gilded Knight. That is 46. And of course, let's not forget, these guys have deflective armor, so the first attack against them gets cancelled anyway. And now we're going to see some Spearman making an appearance as well. The unique melee attack line has also been researched now by Lucifron. He's gotten tier 3 of it. So that means that he actually has one more bonus attack compared to his counterpart. He's got +3 attack on his units. On the other side, VortiX would only have +2 maximum, but he hasn't even gotten any of those upgrades yet. He is going for the defense. Actually, he has gotten +2 already. So it's +2. He's got +1 melee defense. The defense upgrade is just now coming in for Lucifron. Love how the priests are also used to heal this army up. I feel like this game is going to be decided in a single clash. And if you ask me about the positions, I actually like Lucifron's army a lot more. Army value is a little deceiving here, I feel, because obviously we're looking at very pricey units for VortiX. He's also mixing in some Gilded Horsemen. But he's going to encounter so many spears, and he's got absolutely no tools to deal with the spears. Granted, he made a couple of Gilded Landsknechte, and those guys are terrifying in melee. But they are also very fragile. That many Yumi with the Onamusha as well, they can pick them apart very quickly. Same for the spears. And once that happens, there is just nothing that deals with this army. I think I like this composition a lot more for Lucifron. He's got a very diverse comp. Heavy cavalry, anti-cavalry light infantry, anti-light units, archers, and armor-piercing mounted cavalry as well. This is a very diverse comp. I don't think that VortiX's army can beat this. Engagement in the middle. Here come the Gilded Spearmen. Gilded Landsknechte as well on the back line. It's tough to call this battle, but I think this is slowly turning in the favor of Lucifron. Spearmen are still standing strong, but many of the Gilded Knights are gone. Onamusha has been flanked though, and many of them have been picked apart, and I think this might be swinging towards VortiX now. Many of those Landsknechte haven't been picked off, and I think this is a big difference maker. Those Landsknechte should have never made it onto the front line. Spearmen should have been picked apart as well. And if the Spearmen are alive, the Mounted Samurai will disappear in a second. Retreat is in nice order though, and a lot of pricey units are being picked off here. I think this is still an okay situation for Lucifron because he's picking off a lot of valuable units here. Look at this. These Gilded Landsknechte are still such a pain to deal with for Lucifron, but he's going to clean his army up after all. Army population is dead even, but raw numbers actually are heavily in the favor of Lucifron right now. Don't forget, every unit from the order costing double population. Onamusha still have to focus down the heavy cav though. So Spearmen make it to the field as well, and indeed, VortiX is going to have to call off this assault. Onamusha is going to be very oppressive to deal with though. They do have 11 base attack, so they actually do quite well against all of these units, but specifically against those Gilded Knights, they are exceptional. And now it's just Mass Spears. Mass Spear and Onamusha is going to be a composition that's extremely difficult to deal with for VortiX. Right now, he is mixing in some Landsknechte, and that's probably the unit that could work, as long as the Ashigaru are dealt with. The problem is that the Yumi Ashigaru, actually, if they pick off the Spears, or the Landsknechte even, then there is nothing that can deal with the Spears, so the cavalry is just going to die to them. Another engagement, another skirmish in the middle. Bannermen are still around, especially for the Yumi. They still have their Bannerman. I don't see the Uma Bannerman anymore. There's a Katana Bannerman somewhere. Skirmish back and forth. Once again, big micro here. But the cavalry is being just decimated here. Katana Bannerman projecting its aura to buff these spearmen. These spearmen are also terrifying, and we're seeing two armies clash where both of the armies have an extremely high quality. But frankly, the Order's army doesn't exceed the quality of the Japanese army by a mile, but it's a lot more expensive. And when you look at the army value, it seems dead even, but it's 2-to-1 army ratio right now, and those raw numbers are starting to matter. Once again, cavalry charging in here, but they just get picked apart by the spears. Destroyed value is starting to rise rapidly for Lucifron, and VortiX is struggling to hold the Japanese at bay. A lot of this success in Lucifron's side comes down to the Bannerman being utilized. And that Bannerman essentially cancels out the quality advantage that VortiX has on his army. And then you have a Juggernaut eco, of course, for Lucifron. He's taking very efficient trades now, although he's kind of running low on Spearmen. Has to be cautious with this engagement. Some Samurai now make it to the field as well. Looks like Gilded Archers have been mixed in by VortiX. This is going to be responded to by Samurai, some Mounted Samurai, some Foot Samurai as well. And raw numbers are once again seemingly dominating this. Don't forget, it's difficult for VortiX to replenish his army because these units are so expensive. And that's a problem when you have such a quick change between unit compositions. Players are reacting to each other's moves with the units that they are making, but it's a lot more difficult to do that and build up a reasonable amount of a counter unit when your units are so expensive. This spam favors the Japanese a lot more, and I think we're seeing that on the battlefield now. Lucifron is pulling ahead more and more. Ecos, kind of even, slightly better actually for the Japanese player here. And of course, when it comes to the spam, it's not just resource availability, it's also production speed. You look at the production buildings over here, you have quite some here for VortiX, but it takes a long time to build these units, 18 seconds for a Gilded Archer. You compare that to, let's say, the Yumi, it only takes 10 seconds, partly because of the Yorishiro. Like, if this building had a Yorishiro in there, it would be different even. But would you look at that? With the fights having stopped, Lucifron is going to use that window to go into Imperial. He's going up to the Tanegashima Gunsmith. He's also upgrading his town center into the Daimyo Palace. So this is going to be a strong point to defend. The Gunsmith is being built somewhere at the back. A little exposed for my taste, but should be fine. And that is going to give a definitive tech advantage here for Lucifron. VortiX is pretty far away from Imperial. He does have a respectable force, though. He could try pushing this, or he could also try slowing things down. He is going to have the resources to get to Imperial in a minute. He gets the notification of Lucifron reaching Castle Age, or Imperial Age, actually, beg your pardon. So now, VortiX is going to move out, trying to punish that early Imperial. Upgrades coming in here, Yumi first. And then Spearman also getting their unique upgrade, the Nage Yari, as well as the elite upgrade. No upgrade for the Mounted Samurai or the Foot Samurai, neither for the Onamusha, but we do have the Ozutsu coming in, and that's a big thing. Ozutsu heavily armored, and we've seen this unit dominate so many battles before. It's such an oppressive unit. Look at that, 40 base attack, firing from the back line with 6,500 range. Cavalry trying to flank over here, but the Ozutsu just start picking them apart. And these Yumi, they don't mess around, man. When the Bannerman is buffing them, even with veterancy, they can actually beat this horde of Gilded Archers. And it's not just quantity over quality at this point, it's also decent quality as long as the Bannerman is still standing. Numbers are looking a lot better for VortiX now, though. Elite status is in for the Archers, Ozutsu slowly making their appearance on the battlefield. Hard to call this battle because the raw numbers are still looking a lot better for VortiX. I just don't know about the efficiency, though. It seems more and more common that he's trickling in units rather than having one concentrated assault. And the reinforcements take a lot less time to arrive here for Lucifron. And I think we're starting to see that swing on the battlefield. Once again, Yumi Bannerman arriving onto the playing field, making these Yumi Ashigaru just as good as these Gilded Archer. Maybe not exactly that good, but fairly decent to say the least. Alsbach Palace on the way, though. VortiX knows that he needs to get to Imperial. No point making the Pass of Schwabi at this point with 100 villagers already available. He's going to play Alsbach Palace right at the front of his base. He's rushing it up quickly with 26 vills. And Lucifron does not have vision on this. I think the landmark goes up before Lucifron arrives. Might be a little dicey, but this landmark should complete just in time. Indeed, VortiX will be spotted. Lucifron moves in, gets a couple of picks, but won't be able to accomplish much against the landmark for the time being. Has to regroup here. No elite upgrades on VortiX's forces yet. That's a window still for Lucifron to exploit. He does have elite status on the Yumi. He now has elite status as well on the Samurai, or he will have that soon. He's very heavy on the Yumi Bannerman. He wants to make sure that his own Yumi are always buffed. Push in. Flaming Arrows also on the way. Farming Eco heavily exposed here for the Order. VortiX, he needs to fight this, otherwise his Farming Eco is going to go down in flames. And that's exactly what Lucifron is trying to accomplish over here. Dive deep. He's actually willing to fight underneath the Alsbach Palace, diving very deep into the enemy base. But he's shutting down the entire food eco of VortiX here with the Yumi Ashigaru. Archers, Gilded Archers, those are, they still need a couple of seconds until they get their elite status. The Samurai can also close the distance. And there is not a single unit from VortiX that can pierce the armor of those Samurai. 8 ranged armor, even those Gilded Archers struggle against that. And now, with only a handful of Gilded Archers remaining, the Ashigaru overwhelm, supported by the Samurai. It is over, I feel. I think VortiX is out of this 110 population against 200. And the Japanese reign supreme against the Order. VortiX taps out of this one, and Lucifron secures this set 3-2. What a lovely set that we've just witnessed, folks. Classic VortiX versus Lucifron, a lot of micro, very aggressive gameplay. We've seen some Civilization matchups that we don't commonly see, like Ottomans versus Jushi, also Japanese versus the Order. Overall, a spectacular series. This means that Lucifron secured 3 points for his team, whereas VortiX was able to get only 2 points. The team with the higher amount of games won is going to be the one moving into the grand finals. And if my team performed well, then we will be the ones meeting the winner of this matchup. If you want to know how we performed, you can actually catch parts of that, as I did cast Beastie versus B. If you want to check that out, it's already up on my YouTube channel. Make sure to check it out. And if you enjoyed it, make sure to press a like on that video as well. With that, I'm going to thank you for watching today. Once again, make sure you give some love for Don Artie for putting this tournament together. I will put the link down in the description to his channel. Share some love with him. And if you enjoyed this video, I greatly appreciate if you press a like, if you subscribe to the channel. It helps me greatly. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next cast.